Hello, everybody. I'm Jared Kennedy. I'm the chair of the Weber County Progressive Caucus, and we're so happy to have all of you. You probably won't hear me speak too much today, as I'm going to give it to our historian, Nikki, to ask a lot of the questions. But I just wanted to say, first off, thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to have all of you here and to have Grant, Jen, and Jade. Sorry, bad with names. I know, but all of you have known me. I'm bad at names, I think I'm gonna just give it off to Nikki for this round. Thank you.
That was the shortest caucus business ever.
Yeah.
Round of applause for that, right? All right. I will try to have a loud, booming voice like Jared does. I don't, but I'll do my best. So, welcome, Utah Progressives. Wow, there we go. And a huge welcome to no one who joined us online yet, but they'll be here eventually, maybe, possibly. But we have a great turnout here in person, and that's really what matters the most, right? And then thank you so much for carving out your Saturday afternoon to be here with us. This is exactly where we need to be, not just talking about change, but actually planning it. Before we get started, if you're here in the room and haven't scanned the QR code yet, anybody? We can get that for you. So that gives you access to our brand new member portal. So if you haven't done that, let us know. One of us will get it for you. I sent it through the chat, I think. But we are going to use that as a meeting app today. So you can access things like bios for our wonderful panelists here, information about the executive committee of the caucus, as well as other information about the caucus. It is in work in progress, so we will be adding additional resources, and that will be getting locked down after this meeting and utilized as a way for us to communicate with those of you who are members of the caucus. So that way you keep us honest about the financials, the initiatives we're going after, and giving us advice about what you guys want to see more. We really want you guys to be very involved, and this is a way for us to be in communication in a more structured way. So, through that app, you can ask questions if you prefer to not have to speak out loud, although you're more than welcome to ask questions during the live Q&A later via the microphone. So that is up to you. And we also do have a feedback form in there. So we actually want to get your input about what you want our next initiatives to be, what you want to see more of, and whether or not you like this event. So make sure at the end of it, you don't have to pass a judgment yet, but at the end that you do complete that feedback form. All right, so if you're like me, you sometimes feel a familiar frustration that we know what people want, but the people in power aren't really listening. We're tired of the usual political script. That's why we're calling this not just a panel, but a strategic planning session. During the session, we're going to get an actionable playbook to move the needle here in Utah. We have three absolute powerhouses here today, leaders who are on the front lines fighting these battles every single day. And they are here to share their highest impact strategies with us. So now I'd like to introduce our wonderful panelists. So first, we have Representative Jennifer Dailey-Provost. She wanted to be here with us in person, but we were able to get her here virtually. Modern technological marvels, right? She's the minority whip for District 22, and she's an absolute master of legislative strategy and knowing exactly where the landmines and the opportunities are hidden. Next, we have Great Amjad Miller, representative of District 24. Grant brings an incredible expertise in building unexpected coalitions and crafting policy that resonates across the aisle. And finally, we have Jade Velazquez, Executive Director of the Utah Democratic Party. Jade is the architect behind candidate recruitment, training, and building the infrastructure that we need to win. So the focus here today is simple: advocating for progressive policies in the Utah legislature. We'll cover everything from how to ethically pressure Governor Cox's administration administration to exactly what advice to give future House candidates. So let's get to work, guys. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start off. The way I have this structured, I have some questions that are going to be for all of you, and some questions that will direct towards a specific panelist. Now, that isn't to say that if you have something to add to something that another panelist was, a question that was directed to another panelist, feel free to chime in and add in. We are here for all the information you can give us, and we're recording it so that you have it for later. Wait, actually, did you make sure it's recording and transcribing again after it crashed?
Let's double check that. No, it's still recording.
Oh, sweet. So let's get started with a question for all of you. And we're going to just go closest to me to furthest away. So Salt Lake City, you're furthest away. All right. So Governor Cox has championed his Disagree Better initiative. In your opinion, what is the single most effective way for the Progressive Caucus to engage with his administration and the supermajority legislature on an issue where we know we have public consensus, but they aren't listening?
Great question. Well, so thank you for having me. It is an honor to be here. I came up from Salt Lake today. We had our central committee meeting today, and it was a meeting like that and a meeting like this where we are able to make a difference and have our voices be heard. So just by showing up, anybody here you might be live streaming the Ute game right now, but there's other places that you could be. And by showing up and considering running for office or winning races, those are two big ways that we can make a difference. So part of my role as executive director of the Utah Democratic Party is to make sure that we are empowering people with knowledge and training and connections so that you can have your voice be heard. And so you don't have to be the guy or the gal that goes up there to run for office, but being there in the legislative session, participating, being there online in the Zoom and asking questions and being a good, loud, good trouble is what we like to say. I'm actually wearing my good trouble bracelet today. So we want to make sure that each one of you has access to the training and the resources so that you can participate in the legislative session. That's the first barrier to entry. How do I be in the room in person or virtually so that I can have my voice and my perspective be heard? And so we do training with the Utah Democratic Party about how to participate in the session. How do you log in? How do you track bills? Who is my legislator? Some of those basics, I can count on everybody in here to vote, but there are so many people that don't know who their city council person is or who's representing them at the state or at the national level. And so geographically, that's the first thing that you want to figure out is based on my address, who is representing me? And then is that person representing my values? So when it comes to things that we know that are demographically popular and we've got representatives that aren't listening, it's about being persistent and about strong relationships. So being on a first name basis with the staffer, with the actual representative themselves, that's actually how I got started in all of this. I was just a community organizer. I don't have a political science degree. I've never, and I hopefully never will run for office. I'm a behind the scenes guy. I'm a project manager. So ever since I was like a little kid, I was lining people up on the playground. Like, this is what we're doing today. You stand over there. I'm just born this way to be an organizer. And so I wasn't particularly partisan when I started. I started with my community council. Like a little bit here. And my corner of the world just kept expanding. I kept saying, well, I'll show up to that meeting and I can solve that problem. And have you thought about this? And that relationship building, both at the local level and at the state level, is how we've been able to make progressive gains by having people that are running for office, giving them the tools and power to connect with volunteers, helping them to connect with C3s and C4s, other issue and advocacy groups so that they can learn more. But the more that you can is a way that you can make sure progressive voices are being heard everywhere. So it's the role of the state to make sure that you all are leaders. And the Democratic Party is not made up of people like me that are in Salt Lake that are like, sending out emails. It's about the people that show up in the room. And it's about a conversation that I had with Rosemary Lesser like in 2018 when she was about to retire and they were going to go buy a boat and live and go do all of the things that you do in retirement. And she said, oh, I'm thinking about getting involved. And we started working on the Utah for Peace campaign together. And it's little conversations like that, little embers of hope that we hold on to that help us to grow big movements. So yeah, Spencer Cox needs to disagree better with us. We need to be part of the conversation, and you got to be at the table to have that conversation.
Great. And I think the whole executive committee has gotten to experience what it's like to be bossed around by a project manager recently. So but okay, that was great. Thank you so much, Jade. Grant, come on.
If you don't mind, I like to walk around. I get a comfortable if I sit and stop for too long. My name's Grant Miller, representative from House District 24, which is downtown Salt Lake City, over by Liberty Park, Trolley Square. If you're familiar with the territory, I always get in arguments with Jen over this. She represents the avenues in Central City, but I think I have a better part of Salt Lake City, and we'll agree to disagree better on that one. Real quick, I noticed some people said they're running for office. Like, stand up if you're running for office. Anybody? Right on.
I'm Peter Property. I am challenging Blake and Lauren.
For your
James, I'm gonna run for House District 8.
All right. Now this is inspiring because like when we have meetings like this of like we gather together as a community, what are we going to do to change the circumstances? The answer is you start by having the courage to be the change you want to see. So I really admire you guys stepping up and being the leaders in the community, because running for office is hard. It's one of the most difficult things I ever did. It's very vulnerable. It's very difficult. It's exhausting. But if you keep doing it, you keep getting at it, you build coalitions, and then you start seeing change around you, and you start seeing the kinds of things that make the community better. So I want to answer the question here, talking about the governor's prerogative of disagree better. And before I really dive in, I'm like, in order to disagree better, you still have to disagree. There's sometimes I looked up at the legislative body, and a lot of times people are really passive. They disagree with what maybe people in their own caucus are doing, but they don't want to speak up because they're worried about backlash or political consequence or whatever it might be. And you got to have the courage of your conscience. You got to have the courage to disagree. You can do it responsibly and respectfully, but you still have to stand up and dig in your heels, have the courage for your own convictions. I'm a progressive Democrat, I'm a social Democrat, and a lot of people, when they talk to me, they're like, how do you survive up there in the legislature and super minority? How do you not want to scream and go insane? And sometimes I do. Sometimes I do want to just kind of scream into a pillow, but not always. There are ways that you can coalition build across the aisle while still keeping your advocacy and integrity intact. What people don't see in the media is the fact that we actually pass a lot of consensus bills. Over 90% of what comes to the state legislature is passed unanimously. All 104 legislators across the House and the Senate vote unanimously on over 90% of the bills. It's like 10% of the bills that wind up being controversial in some way. And a lot of times I question the integrity and the goals of some of these bills, because a lot of times it's just needless culture clash. It's punching down on vulnerable communities. It's saying you can't have progress flags, you can't have pride flags. We're going to rename a street in Salt Lake City because we don't like who your heroes and political legends are. The people that you respect and revere. That stuff really bothers me, because I don't think that politics should be a game. I don't think that government should be a game. 90% of what we're doing up there is boring stuff, and it should be. It's budgets, like making sure that the police fleet has gasoline and oil change, making sure that our court system has Adobe Acrobat. Yes, I sit on the judiciary appropriations, and these are the kinds of questions that we actually have to deal with. It's actually very boring, and I think that we need to make good government boring again. I hate opening up social media, because all these social media algorithms are designed to sort of inflame your emotions. these algorithms find out all the things that you love and hold dear, and they find someone out in the universe doing something terrible to that thing you love and hold dear. And they do it to inflame senses. They do it to progressives to inflame senses against the other team, and they definitely do it on the other team against us. And when I have conversations, like I was up at interim session on Wednesday, and there's some guys in really far right, but I still have a good relationship with them. There's this one fella, and we're talking about the congressional maps, and he just, was just aghast that Judge Gibson would find a blue district in Salt Lake County. He's like, well, she elected her constitutional duty, she should be impeached. So hold on now. There's an actual process to deal with that. If you don't like it, you can appeal it. It's a legal process. I'm a lawyer myself. You don't just get to fire someone that you don't like. And I'm like, and by the way, we got to tone down the temperature, because I was speaking with the director of the Utah State Bar the day prior. She said that the Judge Gibson and the courts were getting a lot of violent threats. Temperature is really hot. And he was skeptical, this legislator. He said, I don't believe that she's actually getting any threats. And I said, why are you skeptical? He's like, well, all the violence, we all know all the violence is coming from the left. And I had to kind of sit there for a second. I'm kind of like, how do you even? But I'm like, oh, it's because you're in your echo chamber. I'm in my echo chamber. And the trick is, if we're just going to sit in our echo chambers, we're going to sit there, we're going to get really mad at each other. And I talked it through with them, like, what happened in Minnesota? Like, I don't answer my door anymore because I'm a Democratic state legislator. And I've had people come to my house at night. It's scary. And you can't just say that that's all just one side. The truth is, violence is a human thing. Rage is a human thing. It's not a partisan thing. And when you have the temperature so high in politics, anyone can be susceptible to radicalization. And so in order to really address it, we can't just sit in our camps. We have to come together. And it was something that he understood. And the trick is, I think, if we actually want to make progress in this new era of social media and algorithms, you got to close the social media app and you've got to open your phone app and start making those phone calls. Start calling your representatives, start calling your friends and your neighbors, and build coalitions and start coming to stuff like this. This is really encouraging. I want to pass it off to JDP because she's smarter than me and has some better ideas. So once again, my name is Grant Miller. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
That was an amazing answer, and I think we've all experienced trying to talk to someone who's in an opposite echo chamber from you and just hitting a brick wall. So any ideas that anyone has on navigating that, I think is going to help everybody. All right, Jen.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So thanks, Jade, and thanks, Grant, and thanks to everybody who's here. I wish I could see all of you, but I am grateful for this opportunity to participate. So I really like the question. Kind of, it's a broad question, but I want to hit on a couple of things. You asked specifically about Governor Cox's Disagree Better campaign, which, I know Governor Cox pretty well. I've worked with him for a number of years, and I believe him to be sincere in his desire to bring down the temperature. I don't think a lot of people know. I think people assume that this idea is unique to him and that, this was a brainchild of him, this idea of disagree better, but it's actually something that's pretty deeply embedded in political science. The actual concept came from a book called American Covenant by Yuval Levin, who is a conservative writer who writes a lot on federalism and, the role that, states need to have a stronger presence in, in the governance. Am I breaking up? um, and there's a really compelling argument for that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know how much came across, but my concern with Spencer Cox taking a lot of credit for something like Disagree Better is that I think that while it sounds really good on its surface, what it means too often is you just need to listen to me until you agree with my side of the story, which is really common in a supermajority state like ours, you know, where we as the super minority recognize that we have a critical role to play in forcing important conversations on critical policy issues that families across the state, regardless of party, really, really care about. And I think that that is honestly where Democrats really excel is, you know, is bringing the conversation back to what actually affects families, not what partisan, you know, hyper partisan people think of affect families because it affects them personally, you know, sort of a projection sort of mentality. But you know, back to this idea of regaining the authority of our state, even though we are super minority in the state of Utah, we have to recognize that Congress's dysfunction and their ability to get things done means that we're ceding all of the power to the presidency, and he is taking it and he is doing horrific things. And so, you know, if we're going to engage on conversations like disagree better, maybe we need to pivot and say, how about we stop focusing on what we disagree on and let's focus on the fact that we agree that the state of Utah and the state legislature and municipal elected officials here in the state not only are better at recognizing what needs to happen within our community, we're also the ones that grocery shop around our, you know, our constituents, and we go to the same community events, so we drop our kids off at school with these people, and we have to look each, you know, look our families, our communities, our neighbors, our coworkers in the face, in the eye every day, and we are responsible for trying to mitigate a lot of the harm that is coming down the pike. And on things like that, you know, that's where it doesn't matter what, you know, that we can disagree better or not disagree better, but that we are more focused on what we can agree on. And that is, you know, across it, I think it's pretty across the board right now that Congress's dysfunction is creating some real harm, and that we all agree that we need to, you know, the people that are there in the room with you right now, the people that you see at the grocery store, the people that, you know, Representative Miller and I have the privilege to represent, we're the ones that are the boots on the ground trying to get the work done. And so, you know, the degree to which our good governor can plagiarize ideas in other books and, you know, make it a social media sensation. That's great. I love that he does media clips with governor, you know, Democratic governors, and that maybe it gives people pause to think. But at the end of the day, we need to stop talking about disagreeing and finding where we agree, and at least at a minimum, lean into those things and get some work done.
Uh-oh. Sorry, we lost you at a minimum.
Find out where we can get some work done and focus on that.
All right.
Okay, we're not read anymore on our little things. So I want to throw something out there. Kevin, if you see any overlap between the questions we're asking and the local political scene, please feel free to jump in at any point. And I'm going to toss you a question here at the end, even if you don't jump in. So be prepared.
I mean, would you want to answer that first question of how you disagree better and one?
Thank you. Thanks for letting me come and this way. For Ogden City Council. And you know, if we did this race on a theory that Ogden was different, that Ogden was ready to elect someone that was really progressive, we showed up to Ogden Pride. We launched our campaign talking about immigration and DEI, and we're unafraid of going right at the issues. And it turned out Ogden was more than we even knew, because we won by 20 points, which was really. I have to agree with Representative Dailey-Provost there that Governor Cox, the disagree better, I do think is a tool of oppression for the majority party, because it is a lot like, hey, just don't disagree at all. Just go ahead and fall in line. And we do have to speak up. We have to be able to come as we are and speak to against the kind of oppression that happens and the really negative things that Representative Miller talked about earlier. So yeah, I think we do need to make sure that that kind of rhetoric doesn't silence our voices. That's my biggest concern with that sort of rhetoric.
You gotta be flexible. All right, thank you so much. Now, new panelist, Kevin, he doesn't have a bio in there, but I'll get him in there. I should have thrown in a polling question. I love polling. So, polling question, best mustache between the two of them? All right, how's your internet, Jen? It looks good. Okay, so for all of us in the room hoping to help impact change, what is one non-traditional, high-impact advocacy tactic beyond emails? We've all heard email, right? That cuts through the noise and genuinely gets a legislator's attention.
Who are you throwing that to?
Jen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I really like this one, and I will just start out by saying I know everybody says send an email, but the problem is everybody says send an email. So I will tell you in my, I've been in 7 sessions now. The number of emails has increased exponentially, and so it is really, really hard. And we try hard, but it actually is. It's increasingly a challenge to cut through the noise. Used to be that people were really careful that they would only email their own elected officials, but now we have, groups of advocacy groups, a lot of them are super far right, will just blanket email the entire legislature. And so it's hard to sometimes to make sure we know what's coming from our constituents. So if you do email, a couple of things, put the words constituent in the subject line, include your address if you can. And write a personal letter. These form letters are we pick up on them by the time we read the second email that is identical. My best advice that I've always given since even before I ran for office is be the subject matter expert on what you're good at, what you're passionate about for your legislators. We're a citizen legislature, and we tend to have one or two areas that we're really good at. It generally aligns with what we do for a living. For example, I rely on Representative Miller for a lot of the advice on, legal nuance.
Sorry, pause. We caught.
Where'd you lose me?
Sorry, we lost you for a second.
Subject matter experts.
What you were doing. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So we're citizen legislators, and we're good at maybe really good at maybe one or two things and kind of good at a few things, but that means there are hundreds of things we're not good at. And if we're good legislators, we know who in our district is an expert on that thing. And so when I meet people in my community when I meet people in my community, okay. Can you hear me? Shoot. How about now?
No, so we keep losing you.
Okay. Be your legislator's subject matter expert. Reach out to them. Tell them what you're good at.
I might come back to you on the question.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone want to add anything before I move on to the next question?
Well, I mean, the relationships that we have with our legislators are year-round, and they are most busy from January until March. So in those non-months, you want to be sure constituents are, and when Grant gets a text message from that person or a phone call, he knows that that's a real person that lives around the corner, that you have this relationship. I would challenge that relationship can also exist with our Republican legislators at every level of government. So even though you might disagree with what their policy positions are, they still are there to represent you and they work for you. So show up year-round at their events, be following their newsletters, be on a first-name basis with them so that when they are making votes that you disagree with, you have that story that they know. They know who you are, they know where you live, and when they're making that vote, they're going to have your face in the back of their mind saying, what is Jeremy going to be thinking about when I make this vote? And so I think it is year-round organizing that helps us to make a big impact. And I mean, I don't know if that's traditional or not, but like there's so much attention around the legislative session that, you know, they still have to go to work in the summertime and they and so yeah, that relationship has helped me to make a big impact in my neighborhood.
Okay. I think, did you?
Yep, we should be
And
all
if
good.
actually, so, and this is pretty mistake. If you lose her again, we can turn off the video so that we can focus on audio. All right, so Jen, if you want to pop back in.
You want me to repeat?
Yeah, we would love
Not
Okay.
repeat. It starts
All right.
after.
Fingers crossed. I'm gonna. Okay. Be a subject matter expert for your legislators. So whatever you're good at, reach out to them. Just say, hey, this is my profession. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I know a lot about. When a policy comes up that has to do with this subject area, I would like to be a resource for you. I am here to provide that because it takes a long time to become an expert on, 900 things every session. And so I intentionally find people in my community who are experts in their areas so that and then I save them in my phone, with tags or keywords. So at a moment's notice, I can give them a call and say, please help me understand how this affects the people you work with or, your job or your community. And that's just a way to not only just say, hey, I'm a constituent, but hey, I'm a constituent who's here to help you be successful, even if they're especially if they're a Republican, because like Representative Miller said, we tend to live in our echo chambers. And if you can help your legislator break out of their echo chamber in a professional, substantive way, that's really meaningful, especially as citizen legislators when we are called upon to understand a lot of things that are very complex in a short period of time.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we're gonna do we'll send out an email and we'll find out where you guys are experts in everything, and we'll compile a list and we'll send it over, right? Okay. Did you have a question?
I have a question.
So we are going to do an open Q&A at the end, but if it's directly related to this, I will let you.
Oh no! It's not.
So we're doing open Q&A at the end. Totally good. But all right. So I'm going to move us forward. Yes. I'm going to move us forward. So Grant, given the legislative climate, what is one progressive policy that is disguised as a common sense Utah value that is ripe for a bipartisan push this year?
I love this question. I'm going to stand up again and do the old 7-inning stretch. No, what I love about this question is actually there's a lot more that we have in common, I think. And just because we're progressives and someone else is conservative, at the end of the day, our end goals are usually pretty spot on. We all want to have safe communities. We all want to have good schools. We want to have good roads. The question is how we get them. But you're talking about, progressive values that take the Utah way. I think affordable housing is right this year. And it doesn't matter if you're red team or blue team, let's go on affordable housing. That is a Utah value. Has anyone, I'm looking for the Constitution nerds in here, has anyone read the Utah State Constitution? Anybody? It's okay. There's no shame here if you've done it. It's good job. I see a couple of hands in here. And what I love about the Utah State Constitution is it's unique. It's different than the federal Constitution. And if you open it up, Article 1, Section 1, right at the top of the document, it says that every Utah has the right, the constitutional right, to acquire, possess, and protect property. And not allowing for affordable housing that you own is a violation of our constitutional rights as Utahns. It's not a blue issue, it's not a red issue, that's a Utah issue. As progressives, we've been talking for a long time saying we need to have access to a place to live. It is a reasonable, fundamental human right. And we're working against all of these corporate interests. There's just so much money involved in trying just to raise the rents and raise the property values. And we need to get directly involved as a government to ensure that right. This is something that I think is right for addressing this legislative session. Like I said at the top, the trick is how we get there. One thing that I kind of find frustrating is that whenever I talk to my colleagues on the other side, they say, well, it's about market. It's about market. You know, we just got to allow the market to just figure out the market stuff. And I'm just like, well, no, that's how we got is by not carefully regulating. I'm not saying overly regulate. You don't want a situation like in California where people can't build with government grants because all that government grants going to go try to overcome the red tape. If you guys have read Abundance by Ezra Klein, really good book about that. It's about some opinions. It's about finding balance. It's about finding balance. And when you don't get involved in housing markets and regulate things to allow for fair market rates, and we find ourselves priced out. I'm a millennial myself, I'm 35 years old. My wife is an attorney. I'm an attorney. We could barely afford our 2-bedroom bungalow in downtown Salt Lake City. We were priced out for about a year and a half until we finally found something. We were in the market for so long. And the prices of houses are not coming down. And we have an entire generation of, like Generation Z kids that can't have any expectation of ever owning their own home. And for the first time in American history, we have a generation that has less wealth than the generation before. For the first time, we have a generation that doesn't have the expectancy to achieve the American dream of having your own home, to raise your own family. And that's something that we have to change. I think we have bipartisan motivation to start making inroads this session. So keep your fingers crossed. That's something I think is right.
Definitely fingers crossed. All right. So Jen, I think this one somewhat relates to the last one. So many Democratic bills die in our supermajority-led legislature, but their ideas reappear in Republican bills. What's a recent small stealth win where the minority caucus successfully injected progressive language into a majority bill, and how can we help track those opportunities?
Well, I would say, let's see. I can think of some really controversial bills. I'm gonna kick that, I'm gonna maybe kick that to Representative Miller to address if he wants as well. But so yes, absolutely true. Democrats run bills all the time that we run and we run and we run, and then eventually a Republican wakes up and has an epiphany and is like, oh my gosh, I have this really great idea for a bill. And then magically it comes across. I would say one of the most fundamental ones that I've seen in my time was actually my first session, so the 2019 session. Enhanced penalties for hate crimes was passed, which was a really really big day in the state of Utah. And what most people don't know is that it took 18 years to get that legislation passed, and that liberal and progressive candidates, or I'm sorry, electeds had tried to run that for a number of years. If I remember correctly, the that original bill actually had a sunset on it and was taken out quietly. And so when it did pass, it became permanent legislation. And I think that was sorry, my office light just went off. I think that was a really fundamental way to make sure that we weren't tiptoeing around something that was fundamental and needed to be a permanent part of our state code.
Awesome, thanks, Jen. And it sounds like she punted one over to you there. You have anything to add?
Sure, I'll swing at that. I know what Jen's talking about. That was there's a really nasty immigration bill that kind of came through last year, and the trick was just having some very meaningful conversations behind the scenes of saying, hey, look, what's going to happen here is you're going to allow ICE to kick down the doors of law-abiding citizens, of good people, of people who've been here forever, and you're going to be tearing apart families, Utah families. And that got the attention of the bill sponsor, and we were able to take what would have been a really horrible bill that would have radically expanded the authority of ICE in the state and minimize to a point that I don't, under my analysis, I don't think it expanded ICE's power at all. But it was a very sensitive sort of topic. But like even more on point, like how do you kind of fly progressive issues under the radar? I'm new to the legislature. I've only had one session so far. One of my favorite accomplishments came before I was a legislator. I was just a citizen, just interested in politics, policy. And as a lawyer, I was volunteering for this place called the Rainbow Law. what we did is we did name and gender marker changes for people free of charge. You know, like this is how you get a name and gender marker change on your driver's license and on your birth certificate. And one thing that really bothered me under the old law was that if you wanted a name or gender marker change, you had to go to the Department of Corrections and ask for a clean bill of record proving that you're not a sex offender. And that was really gross because I feel like our state has always kind of created this narrative that if you're a member of the trans community or queer community, therefore you're some kind of deviant. And this narrative has always been built up. And this was something that was clearly built into our code, that if you want to have your own identity identified in formal government documents, you still have to go through a really gross process. And so I said, that's really wrong. And so I reached out to one of my friends who was a state legislator, Sarah Hayes, and I kind of told her the problem. She said, well, let's give it a shot. We have an angle, and the angle was this. We weren't going to talk about gender identity per se. We're going to talk about government float and waste of money, bureaucratic movements. And so when we presented the bill at committee, when we talked about the purpose of it, we said we have the Department of Corrections going through all this unnecessary paperwork because if someone's a registered sex offender, we already know that their name's already published on the internet. We're just creating all this waste in the Department of Corrections. It's costing us too much money. We need to cut that bloat out of our budget, create less bureaucracy. Oh, the committee, they loved it. They love the idea of less government, you know, what they perceive to be less government. They love the idea of saving money. And so like the bill flew right through committee unanimously, went right through the House floor unanimously, went to the Senate, and then became law. And it was one of those profound examples of like, well, if you use the right language, if you know how to you know sort of speak the language of your adversary and find that common ground, then you don't wind up hitting those brick walls that you normally would, getting bogged down in political definitions or cultural battles. You can still get to that end goal. So like in my mind, there are definitely ways that we can get progressive policy through. It just depends on how we frame it and the allies that we make across the aisle and finding common policy goals. So that's one example.
Can I jump in really fast with follow up with that?
I would imagine being an attorney helps you to frame things for your audience quite well. So
I'm going to jump in really quickly because Representative Miller is entirely too humble. His ability to take the teeth out of that ICE bill, his freshman year, very first year in the legislature, convincing very seasoned Republicans to make sure that we had less bad policy was really, really incredible. And I just want to give him credit for the amazing work that he accomplished with that.
thank you so much. All right. So moving on, we'll go to you now, Jade. So what is the most effective, proactive voter engagement or constituent outreach strategy your team uses to connect with people who are not already politically active?
Oh man, that is such a good question. And what we know for sure is that we can out-organize Republicans 9 days out of 10 of the week. They take their positions for granted, and when they do run races, they try to buy their way in. So we see digital strategies, we see mailers, we see texting, but the Democrats win races on the doors. Our face-to-face connection that we have with our neighbors is our number one way of winning races. And there are studies out there that show that you are much more likely to vote for somebody if they actually show up. And so when Representative Miller or Representative Dailey-Provost or Representative Lister are out there, they are making human connections with their neighbors. And so as progressives, we need to have our participation in canvassing efforts. And sometimes canvassing can come in a few different forms. That might be shown next door. I happen to be married to an introvert, and he would rather eat a bowl of glass than go talk to a stranger. But he will do lit drops all day long. He will send text messages, and that kind of relational organizing. He'll talk to his friends. I'll say, hey, did you talk to your top 20 friends? Just text them and say, have they voted yet? So I think that it's the relational organizing that is still an untapped resource. So many of our people don't even know who their representatives are, or that there are elections happening. When we were doing GOTV texting, get out the vote texting and calling last cycle, it was amazing how many people said, "Hey, what? There's an election going on? Like, what was that yellow envelope that came in the mail? Why does this even matter?" So some of those basic conversations, we have to meet people where they're at. And sometimes that is on the door. And having knocked thousands of doors, I think every one of us will say my first couple of doors are always kind of scary. But then once you get into it, you're like, oh, I'm just talking to my neighbors. I'm doing more listening than talking. I can hear what they care about. That's a way that we can connect with people on a real human way. And let's say that you're not about doors, but you are about having fun. One of the things that has really helped the Salt Lake County progressives and progressives across the state is really building relationships through community organizing and panels just like this. So maybe it is having donuts before the panel so that we can all like hang out and get to know each other. It could be happy hour stuff. It could be family friendly stuff like parks or bowling. We are doing some really innovative stuff. We're bringing some bros together in Salt Lake County. We're doing some meat smoking and some beer brewing. We want to have different kinds of activities that meet people where they're at. And through that community building, it's like you come for the issue, but you stay for the people. And some of my best friends that I've met are through political engagement. Just talking with Kim at the Eleanor Roosevelt lunch when she gave the invocation, like I just remember these beautiful relationships. We were talking to Peter up at the Davis County Dems potluck they had a couple weeks ago. It is the individual relationships that we have with each other that help us build a community. We all feel, we've had those feelings where we feel alone out there. And I know that if I'm up here, I've got a friendly face that's going to give me a good dinner recommendation, or people that I can rely on when I say, you got to fill an auditorium with progressives, call your 10 favorite friends that want to get involved. You want to be listening for those things of like, you are so involved. How did you learn how to do this? You say, come to this panel, come to this house party, come to this potluck, and we can get you to meet some friends and neighbors. And I truly believe it is the community that helps us to get more people elected.
Testers for the.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely come on down or start your own up here. I mean, if there's an event that you want to host and it's not happening, you are the change. I love that you said be the change that you need to see. I bet Kevin knows a thing or two about smoking.
Fabulous. Well, and I think you made a good point there. The knocking doors really does make a huge difference. And I mean, we are in Utah. This is like the mecca of door-to-door sales, right? So I'm sure we've got some very skilled people. I did it when I was 19. I think we all go through that stage now.
If you've never done it before, going out with a candidate that is running for office is a great way to watch them do it. It just demystifies it. You're like, oh, well, yeah, I can go talk to strangers. That's fine. I talk to people all the time.
Can I chime in here a little bit?
Yeah.
So, knocking doors for myself, highly effective. Like getting out there and meeting people and going through that process. And for many of you who are so engaged and ready to be here, willing to go through a bit of the pain of knocking doors, because I'm going to tell you, like, I've done it a lot for other candidates. It's not fun. Like sometimes you go out there and you knock on 30 doors and 15, 20 of them are not home. You end up having a couple of conversations and you leave going, was that very effective? And I think what we can do, and particularly when we're talking about bringing in new volunteers and new community building, is don't bring them to a door knocking event the first time. We need to think about other kinds of events that we can bring them in and they can leave going, wow, that was fun. They actually accomplished something. So what we, as Dan, my political advisors here, Dan Martinez, and my campaign manager, Carrie Harbath, we just met to talk about areas of our campaign that went well and areas of our campaign where we could have done better. We thought engaging our volunteer base was a way in which we could have done better. And we could have actually built community amongst those that volunteer base by having an event where they come together and we write letters and we go to the coffee shop and we hang out, have fun, and you bring that new you bring that new person in and you just get to enjoy each other's company. And I think that's how we can build a volunteer base around some of these campaigns, some of these ideas that we have that are not going to burn them out immediately. They're not going to make them, take the hardest core ones and get them there and go knock doors, because there are studies to show that it is effective, like reaching them, but it's also an effective way for burning out folks. And so I think we got to make sure as we're trying to reach out, we're bringing people in. The campaigns look individually at different events that can be fun. We try to find the joy in our campaign in every way that we could, and portray that. And that was not just good for the volunteers, but it was good for the community to see as well.
We can't forget the party side of Democratic Party.
Okay, so if you guys have any ideas for some parties you want us to throw, let us know.
It'll be in the form.
Yeah, we like to play that around here, okay? All right, so let's move on to okay, I'm on Grant. Grant, can you share a specific story of finding unexpected common ground with a non-progressive constituent? And I think, Kevin, you can probably add this one after too.
Well, that's interesting. So I live in a district that's very progressive. And so there were, there are a lot of registered Republicans in my district, but they're definitely rhino. What kind of came to mind though about sharing common ground isn't necessarily the last time I met a conservative constituent, but one of my conservative colleagues up on Capitol Hill last Wednesday. So just pulling in for a recent story. I sit on the Government Operations Interim Committee, and there was this bill that was going to phase out ink on paper signatures by 2030. Right? Like we've been doing ink on paper signatures since 1200 AD as a human species. And they want to get rid of it in 5 years. And they wanted to switch to this digital only sort of thing. You have a tablet and scan someone else's driver's license. And I understand they want to verify someone's identity right on the spot. But it's using this theoretical model that has never been tested. Like right now, as a candidate, you could go and try and collect signatures in this way. No one has ever tried. No one's ever proved the concept. And in my mind, I'm thinking these guys always trying shenanigans to get rid of our ability to gather signatures. I'm like, this is a red flag. I don't like this. I don't like it at all. But I sit on the committee, interim committee that day. There were 3 Democrats present out of 13 people. Because we're a supermajority, there's only a handful. So I know I didn't have the votes to kill the bill. But I looked across the committee is kind of like this horseshoe. And there's these extreme right wingers, these religious right wingers, these guys that I really kind of don't get along with. Great. But like I said earlier, sometimes you just we call it strange hot tub party, strange bedfellows. You just if you guys believe in the same destination, it doesn't matter the reason how you get there, maybe you have some allies. And I could tell he was uncomfortable by it. I could read his body language. So I pull out my phone and I text him and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this bill? And he's just like, how are you supposed to collect a signature on a phone? He's like an older guy, right? So he can't fathom how you even do this. This is ridiculous. You want to gather signatures, you do it with a paper and a pen. And he was really aggravated about it. He just thinking about his own constituents and those folks and how they collect. And he was I can tell he wasn't to it. I'm like, well, I give him a little bit of political cover. Maybe he wants. And so he started I realized that he didn't like it, but he was worried to stick his neck out. So I made a motion to pass over the bill, pretty much table the bill, just to move over the bill. And then he popped in and he started talking about how you collect signatures on a driver's license, on a cell phone, and his entire wing over there, right wingers, the older guys, he's not how are you supposed to do that? And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter how or why we get to the same destination. We're going to get there. And I started counting the votes. And I started texting the other guys on the other side. I'm like, hey, you need this too? And they're like, yeah. And so we went around, we took the vote, and it killed the bet. And it's well, that's kind of how you do it. I mean, this guy, him and I couldn't be farther apart on the political spectrum. And he's introduced bills that I hate. But last Wednesday, we couldn't be closer friends. Because we saw a common enemy in the same bill for very different reasons. But it didn't matter because we could coalition build if we could find that commonality. So that's one example. I try to use that same sort of approach with constituents that you even want to knock a door and someone's like, I don't like you. Let's just talk. Thanks, Grant. I'm I live up this street and I want to represent everybody. And also, the things that we believe about at the end of the day are probably things that we agree about. It's just how we get there. difference. So taking the time to identify where your strange allies are and might be in certain cases really helpful in advancing policy. So that's one example of story.
That's I work in med tech, so I see that face on the older folks quite often of just like just utter disgust and horror. So, but they usually have a good bow tie. All right. Kevin, do you want to add to that?
Sure, yeah. So I have a supporter throughout the campaign, and he lives on a corner next to an elementary school, and there's 2 Kevin signs in his yard and a giant "Don't Tread on Me" flag. And I was, but what we found in common was that the system was broken. And the system, and that I was coming at this from a kind of an anti-establishment point of view, which is something we could do in Utah all the time. We're the minority party. The system was built by the other people, right? And so we can say, hey, the system's broken. It's not working for you, and this is why. And here's how I plan to help. And I think that speaks to a broad swath of people right now.
I think it was personally, I think we need to like claim that flag at this point in history. They don't say it anymore, but this is how you keep the voters. All right, so let's go to. Yeah, I think this is a good one. I think this is one that we all want to know, right? Okay. If we encounter someone right here in Weber County who is considering a run for the Utah House, what are the top 2 to 3 pieces of essential actionable advice beyond raise money you would give them right now to prepare for their campaign? And I want to open this up to all of you. And do any of you guys have like a really hard stop? Okay, cool. So I'm going to open this up to all of you. So let's start. Last time we started closest to me, we'll start furthest from me. So Jen, do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. So aside from raising lots of money, yes. Don't be afraid to brag about your accomplishments, even if they don't seem relevant. People want to know what you've accomplished, even if it's getting, library books to 5 low-income kids, just knowing, putting a story behind all of the good things that you try to do at every opportunity. It is, I don't know why it is, it's, being, sort of just really feeling the super minority status of being a progressive or a liberal in the state of Utah. I think we feel like we have to be so overly accomplished and have way more. And I will tell you, it is a fact that Democratic elected officials, by the time they get elected, are in general more accomplished and have more professional accomplishments, educational accomplishments, personal accomplishments than the typical conservative. And that is strident and partisan, and I apologize for it, but it is true because I think we spend more time trying to make sure we can prove ourselves instead of just proving ourselves. And so just know that every small accomplishment, every story that you can tell about the way that you're trying and fighting with and for your community, those stories really resonate, with these constituents who don't want you to stand on their doorstep and say why Democrats are awesome and why Republicans suck. Nobody wants to have that discussion, even if they agree with it. They want to know what you're actually doing in your community, and those can be told in meaningful, personalized ways. It doesn't have to be like I checked this box, I did this great thing, I did this great thing. Just be like, hey, there's this time that I was having a bad day, and instead of being really angry about it, I just went and volunteered for a couple hours at the food bank. And this is, the mentality that I'd like to bring to this elected office. These stories really, really matter.
I think that's a wonderful point. And I want to add on to that is even when we run and lose, we move the needle every single time. So, I know as progressives, we're so tired of change, but if it moves the needle, and it's so important.
It's important to move the needle, and every race helps build community and training and knowledge around the area of relationships. And every time we do that, that data then helps the next candidate that comes after you. The advice that I would give to a candidate is don't forget about the businesses. We are still driving an economic message here. And our local business owners have a tremendous stake in their community, and they are ready to invest in people that are candidates that are going to represent them. You can also build a network of vendors that might be able to help you. They have constant traffic of people. Some of my best campaigners have been hairdressers. They talk to people in the chair all day long about what's going on in the community, and they know everything. So don't forget about the business owners, because the traffic that they see and the people that they know in their own networks, they are hustlers, right? And so sometimes it's really easy to fall into the trap of just one-on-one individual or family connections. And I think our business community is looking for Democrats and progressives to say, I'm here to make your life easier too.
So my piece of advice is going to harken back to that first question about disagreeing better, because I think that tool is often used in campaigns. I also hear it often talked about, well, we've got to make sure we run a clean campaign. And I think that is a tool that makes it so it makes candidates afraid to make an argument.
Yeah.
And my first piece of advice would be to find your points and make your arguments. Find your points about why your opponent is hurting the person across from you, the person in your community. What policies are they doing that are hurting them? And then make that point. And let me tell you, this is something that's not actually that easy to do, because they'll be like, "Oh, Kevin's so mean." We heard that. I heard that all the time. That was the argument against me that oh, Kevin's not going to be able to work with his fellow council members, and he's not going to be able to work with the mayor because he's making all these arguments. And I think in the past, many campaigns have been afraid that making an argument would hurt them with the voter base. And we had a theory that they wanted to see a fighter, that they wanted to see someone that was fighting for them. And that theory of the case turned out to be true. And, and I'm going back to saying how it's sometimes not easy, because there are many moments where you've got, the person next to you, your opponent is a person, and it's hard sometimes to be there in their presence and the presence of their supporters and say, you have done some damage, and I'm going to point it out. It doesn't mean that I'm not trying to make an argument against this person, right? I'm not making an argument against the person. I'm making an argument against their policy, and that I think we can do better in the future. So find those things. Make an argument. If we're going to make an argument, going back to the point, if we're going to run a race, and many of these races are very tough, right? Many times we're going to lose. But if you make the argument, that's how we're going to draw people to our side. That's how we're going to win people over permanently. So it's not a seat that, like Rosemary Lester's seat, it's flipping back and forth, and she's an incredible candidate, an incredible person. How do we make that seat permanently to our side? Is by winning the arguments, making those arguments, and helping people see that the policies coming from this group of progressives is going to better affect people's lives.
Real quick, does anyone listen to jazz music? Anyone listen to Thelonious Monk? Any Thelonious Monk? A couple of you, why not? Right on. The reason why I say this is that I want to tell a quick story. Thelonious Monk once hired on this new sax player to gig with him, and the sax player asked for some pointers, not musically, just about gigging. And Thelonious Monk wrote up this list of like 25 pieces of advice, and you can Google this. It's a really fun list because I think it applies not just to jazz gigging, to life in general. And one of my favorite pieces of advice on it said, whatever you are, sorry, I mean, remember it. It said, whatever you think is impossible, someone will always come along and do it. The person, no, the genius is the person most like themselves. That was what it was. Whatever you think is impossible, someone will always do it. Genius is the person most like themselves. And I believe that applies to politics. When I ran my race, I didn't really know what I was doing. I'm a public defender, kind of threw myself out there. And I didn't know at the time, but the race I chose to run in was a really, 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 really difficult race. I ran against an incumbent that had been there for about 14 years. And the theory of my campaign is that like he's a really good incumbent, but seeking a seventh term requires some reflection. Now, what I know now is that back in 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, 2024, of all of the challengers that made a challenge inter-party in the Democratic Party for state legislative seats, 99.5 of those challengers failed. And had someone told that to me before I announced my candidacy, I would have said, well, that's impossible. I'm not doing it. The thing is, no one told me that it was supposed to be impossible. So I did it. And then we made it happen. The trick is, whatever you think is impossible, someone will always come along and do it. It's just a fact of life. Now, what are the three things that you need to accomplish that? I think, first of all, you need courage and conscience. That's the number one thing. Just have that moral compass to talk it. But secondly, yeah, it sucks to knock doors, but these things are one of the doors, period. You knock every door 3 times, you're going to win. It doesn't matter the district. But yeah, it takes hard work, more effort than you could even imagine. That's doable. And finally, you've got to take care of your people, take care of your community. If your default inclination is to be a community caretaker, if you actually legitimately leave the service and you go to all the events that you can and you get involved in community projects, people will just look at you naturally to want to lead the community because you're already in that spot. It takes a lot of when I say knock doors, I mean knock doors. For 6 months, every day, I was knocking doors for at least 2 hours a day. We knocked our entire district twice. I wanted to knock it 3 times. People were sick of us. But that's what you want. You don't want people to have to look you up to figure out who you are, what you're about. You want people to, for better or for worse, remember exactly who you are because they met you on the porch. You wouldn't go away until they answered the door. I was that guy. I mean, if someone was in their garage, I'd come into their garage. If someone was in their backyard, I would have pop over the fence and wave them over. I don't necessarily advise this, but what I can tell you is that every vote mattered. Every day that I came home from court and I was exhausted and I didn't want to hit the door, I had worked on too many campaigns before that were lost by double digits. And I knew that like today could have been the day that I could have won that extra couple of votes that put me over the edge. And I didn't do it because I just decided I was too tired. That's not enough. If you believe in community change, you got to get after it. And I was exhausted. I remember once I even did a jury trial. I had a verdict. I went and knocked doors. And people, you know, they don't like you knocking doors. I don't like solicitors in my house, and so I'm a big hypocrite. But the truth is, like, it's different though. When you're the candidate, candidates these days are very inaccessible. You know, you might see someone on the news, you might see someone on Instagram, but you very rarely actually talk to the person. And when you're that person and you're on someone's doorstep, I mean, so many times people would answer the door like, "No, I know politics." Like, hold on, I'm going to be on your ballot. My name is on your ballot. I am the guy that wants to represent you. I am interviewing with you for this job. And if you don't talk to me today, I will be back in about 2 months to talk to you again. So many times, you know, I would hit the ring, and you know, like the ring kind of does like it turns on if someone's on their phone. Grab their attention. I was like, hey, you don't have to come talk to me. But my name's Grant Miller. I'm a public defender. I want to help vulnerable communities. I really want your vote. And if you don't want to talk to me, that's okay. But this is my website. Please call me on my phone, whatever's comfortable. I set to every ring doorbell because every connection matters. And I didn't have any money. I mean, it's like, what besides raising money? My God. I'm a public defender. All I know is public defender. I don't have money. And we really were lean. We're a really lean sort of machine. We did not have money to do the fancy billboards and the text messages and the mailers and all this crap, you know, television advertisements. No, we had volunteers. And we had energy, and we knew that we wanted to see some change in our community, so we got after. So follow your conscience, have your courage of your conscience, even if you think it's going to get you in political trouble, even if you think that it's counterintuitive, that it's against the prevailing wisdom. Just follow your conscience, have the courage to do that. People will trust you and respect you for it. Even if it gets you in trouble, follow that moral compass, because if you don't have it, that's what makes our current political system so corrupt, is that people aren't following what they know to be their own truth, the truth of their community, and what people sent them up there to do. So even if it's a tight spot, just have the courage of your conviction, work hard, knock doors, and finally take care of your people, take care of your. That's what I advise.
But let me just say to be clear, I did knock a ton of doors, and it doesn't suck as bad as a candidate. I'm telling you, actually, it doesn't suck at all. I actually enjoyed the process of knocking doors when I was the candidate because you had a lot more opportunity to speak to someone. And there were so many times I really loved going to underrepresented areas because they were like, "Oh my God, the candidate's on my door." You know, a lot of times that's all it took. Really, it's all it took was like I've never had a politician on my door in this neighborhood ever, and so yeah, as a candidate, be prepared to those things for sure.
I'll give the non-candidate answer. So as an organizer, well, I'm gonna get a dent in my ear from being on the phone all the time. These guys know, like I was on the phone the entire drive on the way up from Salt Lake to Ogden, and I saved my call time for when I'm in the car. But I love one-on-one interactions with people. I don't like being on the door. So I set breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, and evening meetings, right? With like going to dinner, going to coffee, doing that face-to-face interactions, not just with candidates, but with other community organizers. That web that we will keep with each other of like, who is that person I need to call? Where like that is how I spend my time is like talking to people, and if my calendar's not full, I'm not doing it right. Yes.
Get those like all right, so I'm gonna go back to you, Jade, actually. So what is an underutilized state party resource or piece of digital infrastructure that local caucuses like ours should be leveraging immediately to increase our efficacy?
Well, so two things. Number one, the state party has a county party and caucus grant program. We have money set aside for party building activities. So it's not for pizza, but it is to get people to show up. So if you are hosting an event and you need advertising funds, or you are trying to get a venue, or you're trying to get a guest speaker, ways that we can bring more people in, there is money at the state to be able to apply for that. And then the super dorky answer is that every House district has a 500-page report on the demographics of that area. Everything from the age, income, religion, family status, like just, I mean, it is exhaustive to get to know your district. And so if you're trying to figure out who are my neighbors, what kind of messages would resonate here, that common bedfellow thing is super interesting for understanding the demographics of your area. So I think understanding your area is one thing. And then, yeah, that grant program. Also training. Like there are so many good training resources out there that we have for candidates, for county parties, for caucuses. Like how do you run an effective caucus meeting? How do I run an event? How do I run a house party? We've got some really good training about like, we're not doing rocket science here, but how can you be a better organizer with the time that you've got? There are people like me and people even in this room that have been organizing for decades. You can just ask questions of. You don't have to recreate the wheel all the time. So somebody out there has created that material, that check-in list, that door knocking guide, the tips and tricks. Don't feel like you need to recreate the wheel and use your network to be able to ask those questions. And you can always give me a call.
So I'm gonna guess that that's how my neighbor 2 doors down, who used to be on city council, knows everything about everyone.
Yeah, I love that Representative Dailey-Provost talks about the codes in your phone. That is not the first time I've heard that from like the codes that you use for like I met this person at the Weber Caucus, or this person owns pizza parlor, whatever. However, you can find that person, those connections. This is all about relationships, and so yeah, I think getting to know your council person 2 doors down. That person's that could be even if they're not nearby, right? Like that's somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. So my biggest asset is my phone. I used to say Rolodex, but people don't know what the Rolodex is anymore. But some people do. But being the person who knows the person can be a really valuable resource.
Fabulous. And I'm assuming that those trainings are online.
So there is a website called Mobilize that the state party has invested fully in. And I'd say for the last year, we've not used it very well. Mobilize is a site, you can just Google Organize Utah, and it will find activities that are nearby. Once you're in there, it will send other things that are either nearby or things that you're interested in. And the cool thing about it is that for events like this, you can, for our caucuses, For our county parties, it's a free service. So you just have to get it in front of me, send me your date, your time, your location, maybe even a graphic, and we can get it up and we can bring in new members that way. And so if there was somebody that signed up for a canvassing session with Kevin, they might see another event that is nearby or that they might find interesting.
Very cool. Were we on there?
I'm not sure, but the next one will be.
Okay. Make sure now that we know it exists, well, actually, now I do know that exists. Because I
Yes.
totally signed up for it and it sends me emails. Fabulous. Okay, so I want to make sure that we have time for your guys' questions. So while I open up to see if we have any that anyone submitted through the app, let's go ahead and open up the microphone.
That's great.
I had a question for Representative Miller here. I was wondering, I followed your primary campaign quite a lot during the early time of 2023 and 2024. So I was wondering, what was the thought that broke camel's back that really had you decide to run against Representative Briscoe?
That's a great question. What's your name, Ed? Was that? Or, oh, great question. They're very delicate because Representative Briscoe, great representative. And he represented the district well, and I still stand by it. It wasn't, when you think about like politics being like contact sport, you think that like, oh, there needs to be some bad blood, got to smell those, call each other names, and there's like, some horrible reason, some scandal, something like that. It wasn't like that. For me, I have lived in my district most of my life. And there was only ever one name on the ballot. And for a while, I thought that was okay. So we have got good representation. But there's a fundamental problem that if we want to be in a democracy, we need to have a democratic process. And as our democratic process grows, we can be part of that problem. When we don't step up and be part of the democratic process and provide a democratic process, then we are part of that erosion. So for me, I thought if nothing else, we should have some diversity in voices running for our public offices. We need to be out. If nothing else, I figured it would encourage him to go out and knock doors. I would be out there engaging with the community. As a public defender, there was a lot of issues that I had with how the state and the city was dealing with the homeless population. And I wanted to raise visibility to that through a political campaign. I figured a political campaign would be a good way to do it. And so all of those kind of coalesced around this, like, well, what the heck? Let's do it. Let's really make it count. Let's throw a hat in the ring. Let's add like diverse voices to the ballot. Let's give this community a change, or a choice for potential for change. Like I said, you've been in the legislature for about 14 years. And during that 14-year period, no one in our community had a choice for who was going to represent them at the state legislative level. Like I said, he did a good job. I don't think that that was at core of the issue. For me, it was about political inclusion. It was about keeping everyone on their toes, involved in the political process, and aware that you do have a choice. You do have the ability to make a difference. And so, like for me, what was frustrating is I talked about the diversity of thought now on the ballot, and I won the primary, and then I went to the general election where my name now was the only one on the ballot, and I'm like, well, that's still a problem. So like I still encourage people in my district, and like even if you like me, you should. I mean, like you keep your chops fresh as an incumbent when someone challenges you. It forces you to get out into the community, forces you to go out to events, forces you to stay on the doors, forces you to keep that pulse for the people you represent. And so I think it's important. I don't think that you have to have animus or like some sort of like really devastating reason to want to challenge an incumbent. I think that we're unhealthy in our society when we think that we can't or shouldn't challenge an incumbent because we don't have a good enough reason. I think that having a democratic process is reason. So that's hopefully answering your question for me. I really appreciate it.
How's it going, guys?
Great.
So I've been thinking about this for an hour or so I totally typed out my question.
Not to bring some drama back, but first of all, my name's Dakota, but my real name is Average Joe American, because I'm pretty sure we're all wondering about this. The whole toning down the rhetoric thing, I totally agree where you're all coming from, but what if the other side does not tone it down? What if they refuse? Which is kind of what we've all seen for years now. We all kind of know which side has increased the temperature of the last decade. It's definitely not progressives. We can't continue to have our representatives send strongly worded letters to the powers that be on the other side, who continues to spew hatred and pits neighbor against neighbor. I personally appreciate it when someone who's actually fighting for us properly talks some proper shit. And please forgive my vernacular, but it's necessary for me to convey my proper mindset and attitude. I understand the future we all want not involve head rhetoric, let alone asshole tactics, but we are also facing the rise of a fascist regime that is also about to render any possibility of anything you guys are talking about doing these days completely inert. I want a happy and kind future, just like all of you do, but that style of rhetoric and perceived decorum hasn't worked in the last decade's worth of political environment. Trump even just recently applauded new New York Mayor-elect Mamdani to his face in real time for calling him a fascist, again, to his face. So why would we tone down the rhetoric when some of it clearly works and makes a difference? Because I only prefer the ones that are actually fighting for us and actually sound like it. Trump and Mamdani both showed us how to win. We need to start winning. Democrats and progressives have a messaging problem, is all I'm trying to say. And always no violent rhetoric, of course. I hope that's inherent as a fellow progressive. Also, thank you all for being here.
For once, I'll speak on this. I think to your point, the rhetoric just keeps coming from one particular side. I know I wasn't really supposed to be a panelist, but here's my thing. Mamdani basically showed us be on your message, be truthful, and honestly, don't mince words. Be very upfront. I mean, this state is very populist. They like Trump's policies, and yet we also like Bernie Sanders. So, like, there are ways to go about it. Just my answer as chair of the caucus to you. Anybody else want to go for it?
You're talking to all of us, by the way. I am Average Joe American.
I'll swear you. When you say your name's Average Joe, like, what's your name?
Bob.
Bob. Like, appreciate it, Bob. No, like I feel it. I feel it. I mean, like I see what's happening. And what was yesterday, 2 days ago, Donald Trump said he wants to start killing Congress members, put him to death, hanging them. Like the kind of rhetoric is it's beyond outrageous. It is chilling our fundamental constitutional rights, our rights as Americans, our system, our fabric of our society has been completely threatened by this totalitarian regime. By not like creating ICE agents as your own like personal Gestapo, but like sending them out, kicking down doors, and then filming it, putting it on Instagram, and then like putting quirky little things as if it's a joke. Showing ICE prisoners in a detention concentration camp with their chains and manacles just rattling, and at the top it says AMSR. Or you know what I'm talking about? Like where. Like they're almost they're joking about it, like it's not serious. That like the human suffering, the collapse of our fundamental principles of our society are collapsing. They think it's hilarious, and so I feel that, man. I watch my phone and I want to scream. It's like and also I'm in that position. People ask me all the time, "Great, you got like an Instagram presence of like 26,000, something like that. Why don't you go do it?" What Gavin Newsom's doing, give them a taste of their own medicine. You can get people really riled up, and really give it to them. Just really kind of speak up and they go low, take it to the flow, sort of thing. My position though, I don't know if you guys have heard this saying that you don't wrestle a pig because you both get dirty and the pig likes it. That's kind of my position, and for me, I take it serious. I want make government boring again. Make it boring. I want my representatives in government to be responsible and dignified. I want them to care about what they're doing. I don't want them to entertain. I want them to work. I'm an elected official. It is not my job to entertain. It is my job to work. If I believe that our elected government needs to be responsible and dignified, then I need to be the change that I want to see. And that's the change that I want to see all of our Democratic progressives. I think we can take the bait, we can.
I have a follow-up. If that's okay.
Oh, sure. I mean,
The reason why all these people get elected is because they, quote unquote, seem like real human beings. They're willing to just play it all out, even if it's for the wrong reasons. Can we do that too? No more decorum. I'm sure some people in here agree.
Yeah.
Fight the fight that's being fought right now. Don't make assumptions. Fight fire with fire. Bring gun to the gunfight, not the knife. That's all I'm saying.
No,
Again, no violence.
you're but like you can do that and dignified.
It's working. And we need to get elected in order to make a change.
I mean, we could agree to disagree. But I'll always be steadfast in my approach. There are some folks up there in the state legislature that take some low blows. They get up on Instagram and they attack each other. And it's no coincidence that those are the folks that also are unable to get things done. As a freshman legislator, I passed 4 bills into law. 4. As a Democrat in a super minority, my first session and thank you. That wouldn't have been possible. I wouldn't have been able to represent my district and my community and get things done for them if I was throwing elbows, if I was causing problems, if I was trying to be Donald Trump myself, Gavin Newsom, whatever. That's not me. That's what I don't believe that there's space for that in government. And I think that our government officials need to work, not raise the temperature rather. So anyway, that's my answer to the question.
That's okay.
I appreciate that.
I'm gonna add just a little bit to that. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to stop short when it comes to making personal attacks, and we're always going to make sure that we're talking against political violence every single time. But I started this message by talking about how we got to make a message. We have got to make an argument, and I started the campaign before I even started running, and I had no intention of running at the time. But drawing attention to something that happened in our city via social media, and we didn't hold back. It was a project where Ogden City Council and the mayor ended up opposing a housing project that would have housed 25 homeless disabled adults, and they rejected that plan. And they even went so far as involving the state legislature, involving Ryan Wilcox to make sure that the county could take over this project and do it in our city. And we called it out as we saw it in real time, and we were unafraid to do so. And
that's all I was talking about.
So me personally on the city council, I plan on doing that. I think I can do that, and we'll find out. And work with my people next to me. I really firmly believe that I can oppose things that are hurting the people of Ogden, and I can do it with a strong voice, and I can do it while gathering the people to say, hey, this is wrong, and then at the same time turn to my fellow council member and say, hey, what can we do together next? And that's how I'm going to approach my job at Ogden City Council.
You can be very strong and you can call people out for the misinformation and for the horrendous things they're going to do that hurt the constituency and still not go necessarily to their level. We have the facts on our side and we just need to remember that.
Fire with fire, you don't have to fight if there ain't no fighting. I'm saying respond. If they're going to throw you under the bus, there are so many buses ready for them to just,
They'll throw themselves under too eventually.
Yeah, but you want a message. It's all about the message.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, wait.
If you want this gentleman who said he had a question right at the beginning, I'd really like to hear that, if it's possible.
I think we can do two more.
Yeah.
We can,
Should I go or should I pass it over?
pass it over and on to the next.
Okay, that's cool.
Sorry. Thank you for bringing that back up.
Yes, my question is to the panel. Who do I talk to create affordable housing statewide, like the whole United States? If I was to do something big, if I had a solution, who do I talk to?
Funny you should ask. We got a Democratic congressional race happening right now in Salt Lake County. If you want something that impacts us nationwide, you're looking at Congress.
Yeah,
And
I want to do something else.
yeah, no, one thing that's kind of been frustrating, I know particularly living up here, a lot of your congressional delegation members have not been very responsive. But we're on the precipice of having someone on our team go and represent us. And I think that their prerogative is not just going to be representing Salt Lake County, but all of Democratic progressives across the state. And so follow the congressional race, follow the candidates. If there's someone to support, go support them and stay in touch and cultivate that relationship. Because as a constituent, you can contact your own congressman, your own congressperson, and work on that policy and encourage them to pursue that policy. And for the first time, I think here in Utah, in a very long time, we're going to actually have a way to impact policy at a national level. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
Yeah.
So because there were just so many races, we've got some really good races that are happening up here up north, and we've seen Democrats overperforming in midterms and special elections across the country. And I've had some conversations with Peter Crosby, and I am really inspired by the message that he's bringing and the organization that he's bringing. I've met lots of candidates, and he comes with a serious plan about how to attack this area. So while we can
Back like Warren.
yes, exactly. Hold him accountable. I think that we can reliably expect the donut to happen, but I'd love to see a really great fight out of that up here up north. And just to be a gentleman, yeah. Today I'm wearing my good trouble bracelet, but yesterday I was wearing my punch Nazis bracelet. So depends on the day, but I believe in that accountability. And I think that we all as leaders in our community should be informed, hold people accountable, and have our voice be heard by those legislators.
He wandered off, but that is my husband, so I'll let him know.
Want to mention that the state did release a strategic housing plan as well, so you can talk to your state representatives and read up on the state's strategic housing plan. It just got released and is talking about how to make more starter homes and more affordable homes, and we need to push that farther because the state has always talked a big talk about housing people, and then it comes to paying for it, and they chicken out. So definitely talk to your state representative too, and mention that you want to see that state strategic housing plan be implemented in its fullest, as well as go farther on that. So there is that document you can read up on, and you can give your opinion to your state reps.
Last cycle too, there was a tax surplus, and we all got $7 back. And I personally would have rather seen that $7 go towards affordable housing.
If this is our last question, because I think we want to be able to have some conversations on our way out, because the library does close at 6. So one more question.
Not to not to get too deep into the weeds regarding the argument of depoliticalization. Well, discussed Cox earlier using his Argue Better platform to his Argue Better system to attack our progressive voices by trying to push towards like a neutral expression, or not really having us talk about the bigger issues, or trying to push for minority voices when they attack them. And as such, you're arguing for a depoliticalization of politics in a way, where we want people to, we don't want it to be controversial. And there is a specific argument, I think reading a book recently by Foster Wallace, in which he discusses the
specific tax policy of the IRS is purposely boring in its oppression, because it is that boringness, that depoliticalization, that makes it so easy to ignore, so easy for people to just not even think about it. And that the barrier itself to being in political action is that boringness. And I wanted to know your thoughts about that specific argument when it comes to your personal argument about depoliticization.
I take it I'm on the spot again. No, no, what's your name? Thor, no, I love the question. I don't mean to say like, I just say that we should depoliticize our politics. Politics is always going to inherently be adversarial. It should be. The only way that we can have good policy is if everyone does their jobs. We have to get up and have the courage for our convictions and do it in our heels. That I'm not trying to come here to say like we need to all hold hands and say kumbaya and not do anything that's even remotely like no, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm one of 14 Democrats in the state house. The advocacy is important because there aren't very many of us that have the ability to represent what is a huge unrepresented portion of Utahns in the state legislature. There have been many times where I've stood alone with my colleagues. It is 14 of us just digging our heels, give our speeches, and vote no. That's all we can do. But we make sure that we represent that on the board. And that if we can make inroads into our colleagues across the aisle and have that discussion of how to defang a bill or claw something back or kill a bill that's completely unnecessary, we do that. But I think that there are you choose your own adventure. I think that you can, you shouldn't be afraid to rattle that saber every once in a while. I think that there is good trouble. You shouldn't raise the limit if you're in politics. And by no means am I trying to say that like let's make this so boring that no one wants to be involved in it, and that make this totally inaccessible. That's not what I'm saying at all. But at the point now where political violence is a thing, Charlie Kirk assassination is a thing. And even though there was no motive or intent at no Kings, it's still kind of scary to know that if you're politically involved, it can be physically dangerous, if not deadly. And that is what I'm trying to speak to. I'm not trying to say that we need to make it inaccessible and too boring. What I'm trying to say is we need to have reasonable, dignified discourse. So hopefully that kind of clarifies my position. Thank you, Thor.
And I think that's really important to add that every representative is very different. And it's really, I think it's important to have, you might see that representative that's more of a fire breather, and then another one that's more going to be reaching across and doing things differently. So that everyone, not every representative, not every elected has got to be exactly the same. Yeah, that was such a good question and such a thought-provoking thing that boringness makes something inaccessible. And for better or worse, we can take lessons. The lessons we can take from Donald Trump was that politics suddenly wasn't boring. He got a lot of us involved that weren't involved before that. And so however we can do that, however we can think about that, and sometimes that is bringing the fight to the people and to help get them engaged. The race we just ran, my opponent only got 143 fewer votes than he got 4 years ago, and he lost by 2,300 this time. So, and I believe that was because something about our race, my race, and we had Alicia Washington and Flor Lopez running, made politics in Ogden not as boring as it was 4 years ago. And so we brought other people to the table. So thank you. That was a good thought.
So what is the role of the party in all of this, right? We talk about this big tent, and I see that, look at a couple chess pieces down the road, and we are going to be facing a lot of primaries. We're going to be facing a really contentious convention, and our job as leaders is to make sure that while under this big tent, you don't all kill each other in the same process. We need to make sure that we are fighting our common enemy and not within each other. And then, however the primary ends up turning out, we were able to come together and unify and get as many Democrats elected as possible. The role of the party is to create an environment where we can have respectful dialogue, healthy conflict, and use our voices in ways that allow for good trouble. I love seeing the Capitol lawn filled with people. I love the creativity that we saw with signs. And what I love about the Ogden races was that it was not about fire and brimstone, but it was about hope and optimism. And the last time that we won nationwide was when we were running on the new vision of the future. And so I'm really trying to lead, like use my voice to say, it's not always about clapping back, but it's about coming up with something new that people can hold on to and build community where we can feel connected and have events like this where we can share really good ideas and even have some healthy conflict and like work through it. And I love that thought, like just because we are all reading what we're reading, we're on the boards that we're on, we're serving, we're supporting candidates, it's all this exchange of ideas. And I think the party can really create an avenue for people to have these spaces, to have these conversations.
We are running out of time, but I do want to say thank you so much to our panelists. And thank you, Kevin, for jumping in last second, unprepared. And thank you all for showing up. Now, this is just the first step. It doesn't end tonight. So we want you still scan the QR code, go to the feedback form, and we want to know what policy areas you think that we as a caucus should be focusing on, because we want to make sure that we are advocating and doing things to get you guys riled up and excited. And then on top of that, do you know any potential candidates for any race? Any of them? I mean, what was the one, Eric, that you said it was planning commission for August?
Planning commission for,
Yes, planning commission.
Weber County Commission. Hard would be a hard seat to win, but something I'd love to see.
Yeah, so you guys know anyone, please let us know in there. Be in touch with us as a caucus. Thank you guys for coming up from Salt Lake. We really appreciate it. And let's give them all a round of applause.
I would also like to give another round of applause for Nikki. Nikki has something to brainchild. Running website, this whole thing, project manager for sure. But we are going to start to clean up. Thank you all for coming, panelists especially. But feel free to talk with us. We're going to try to migrate a little bit and multitask. But thank you so much for coming. Seriously.